Picture this. A man in Harare pushes a wheelbarrow overflowing with cash down a dusty street. He's heading to buy bread, just one loaf. Before he reaches the bakery, someone rushes past him. They grab the wheelbarrow and run. The money? They leave it scattered on the ground. It's worthless. The wheelbarrow is worth more. This actually happened. Multiple times. In a country where a single egg eventually cost more than most people earned in their entire lives. I'm holding something in my hand right now that proves just how insane things got. A $100 trillion banknote. That's a 1 followed by 14 zeros. And at its peak, this couldn't even buy you a bus ticket. But here's what really haunts me. This country was once called the breadbasket of Africa. It fed entire nations. Its currency traded above the US dollar. Doctors, engineers, and teachers built comfortable lives there. So how does a prosperous nation destroy itself so completely that its money becomes worth less than toilet paper? That's exactly what we're going to uncover. Not just the what, but the how. The specific decisions, the warning signs, and the moment the point of no return was crossed. The warning signs were there for years. Almost everyone ignored them. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what they missed. More importantly, you'll be able to recognize if it's happening again. Because the forces that destroyed Zimbabwe's currency are not unique to Zimbabwe, and some would argue they're already in motion elsewhere. Before we can understand the collapse, you need to understand what was lost. Rewind to 1980. Zimbabwe had just gained independence. The world watched with cautious optimism. And for a while that optimism seemed justified. The Zimbabwean dollar launched at a value higher than the US dollar. Think about that. One Zim dollar bought you more than one American dollar. The currency was strong, backed by a diversified economy and abundant natural resources. Agriculture was the backbone. Tobacco, maize, wheat, and cotton flowed out of the country in massive quantities. Zimbabwe didn't just feed itself, it exported surplus to neighboring nations. The phrase breadbasket of Africa wasn't marketing, it was reality. The education system was among the best on the continent. Literacy rates exceeded 90%. Universities produced doctors, lawyers, and engineers who were respected internationally. Infrastructure was solid, roads worked, electricity was reliable, the middle class was growing, foreign investment poured in, mining operations extracted gold, platinum, and diamonds, manufacturing plants employed thousands. The economy was diversified and resilient. If you visited Harare in the late 1980s, you'd find a modern city with functioning institutions, a stable banking system, and citizens who had genuine reasons for optimism about their future. This is crucial context. Zimbabwe wasn't always a cautionary tale. It was a success story, a model for post-colonial development. So what happened? How did a country with every advantage systematically destroy itself within 2 decades? The answer lies in a series of political decisions that seemed manageable at first. Each choice appeared justifiable in isolation. Together, they created an unstoppable cascade toward oblivion. The first domino was about to fall. The year 2000 changed everything. For years, land reform had been discussed. The issue was real and complex. Colonial-era policies had left most productive farmland in the hands of a small white minority. Redistribution wasn't just politically popular. Many argued it was morally necessary. But how you do something matters as much as what you do. The government launched the Fast-Track Land Reform Program. In practice, this meant the seizure of white-owned commercial farms. Sometimes violently, often chaotically. Land was redistributed primarily to political allies, war veterans, and government supporters. Here's where the economics come in. Many of the new owners had no farming experience. They lacked equipment, knowledge, and capital. Commercial agriculture isn't just about owning land. It's a sophisticated business requiring expertise built over generations. Within 3 years, agricultural output collapsed. Wheat production fell by 76%, corn production dropped by 70%. Tobacco, once the country's biggest export earner, plummeted. Suddenly, the breadbasket of Africa couldn't feed itself. Export revenue evaporated, foreign currency dried up. The government faced massive budget shortfalls, public sector wages still needed paying, the military still needed funding, political supporters still expected patronage. A responsible government would have admitted the policy had failed, they would have reversed course, sought international assistance, and accepted short-term pain for long-term stability. That's not what happened. Instead, the government turned to the one tool that required no foreign approval, no political compromise, and no admission of failure: the printing press. This was the moment. If they had stopped here, acknowledged the mistake, and accepted the consequences, the currency might have survived. The economy might have recovered. They didn't stop. And the single decision set in motion a chain of events that would ultimately destroy not just the currency, but millions of lives. What followed wasn't an accident. It was a choice. And understanding that choice is essential. Because hyperinflation is never a surprise. It's always the predictable result of decisions that seemed easier than facing reality. Let me explain exactly how a currency dies. Because most people misunderstand this process completely. When a government spends more than it collects in taxes, it has three options: borrow from lenders, cut spending, or create new money from nothing. Borrowing requires someone willing to lend. After the land seizures, international lenders wanted nothing to do with Zimbabwe. The IMF cut ties. Foreign investment fled. No one was offering credit. Cutting spending meant reducing public wages, military funding, and political patronage. For a government clinging to power, this was politically unthinkable. So they printed money. Here's what most people don't understand. Printing money doesn't create wealth. It dilutes existing wealth. Think of it like adding water to soup. The first cup of water might improve the consistency. The 10th cup makes it thin. The 100th cup, and you don't have soup anymore. You have flavored water? Currency works the same way. When you double the money supply without doubling the goods available to buy, prices must rise. The same loaf of bread now has more dollars chasing it. But the nightmare doesn't stop there. A feedback loop ignites. Prices rise. Workers demand higher wages to afford basic goods. Businesses pay higher wages. To cover costs, they raise prices further. The government prints more money to cover its expanding expenses. Prices rise faster. The cycle accelerates. Then comes the truly destructive force: velocity. When people trust their currency, they're comfortable holding it. They save. They plan. They keep money in banks. When trust erodes, behavior changes. People spend money immediately because holding it means watching it lose value. This acceleration of spending pushes prices even faster. Psychology becomes economics. By 2006, inflation hit 500%. Most people thought this was the crisis. They were wrong. This was just the beginning. By 2008, official inflation reached 231 million%. Independent economists estimated the real figure was even higher. At the peak, prices doubled every 24 hours. Most people think hyperinflation is gradual. It isn't. It's slow, then sudden. By the time ordinary people notice something is wrong, it's far too late to protect themselves. The money was dying, and it was taking an entire nation with it. Numbers tell stories, and Zimbabwe's numbers told a story of complete insanity. Follow the denominations. In 2005, the largest banknote was $20,000. By 2006, they issued $50,000 notes, then $100,000. Within months, they printed a $1 million note. Still not enough. By 2008, they released the $100 billion note. Then something that sounds like fiction. The $100 trillion note. That's a 1 followed by 14 zeros printed on a single piece of paper. And it couldn't buy a loaf of bread. Let me give you something concrete. In 2006, 3 eggs cost $1 Zimbabwean dollar. By 2008, those same 3 eggs cost $100 billion. The same eggs, the same chickens. Just meaningless numbers on dying paper. Daily life became a mathematical nightmare. Shops updated prices multiple times per day. Not daily, hourly. Customers would watch prices change while standing in line. The item you picked up 15 minutes ago now costs twice as much. Workers demanded to be paid twice daily, not because they wanted more money, because waiting until evening meant their morning wages had already lost most of their value. Some employers paid in the morning and again at lunch. By dinner, even that wasn't enough. Cash itself became a logistical crisis. People needed suitcases, bags, and yes, wheelbarrows to carry enough notes for basic purchases. Banks ran out of physical currency. ATMs became useless. The central bank removed zeros from the currency 3 separate times. They'd announced that 10 zeros were being dropped. Old trillion-dollar notes became new $100 notes. It changed nothing. Within months, the zeros returned. Mathematics itself seemed to break. How do you budget when prices double overnight? How do you save when your account balance buys less each hour? How do you plan a future when numbers have abandoned all meaning? This wasn't economics anymore. It was collective madness expressed in currency. But behind these absurd numbers were real human beings trying to survive. And their stories reveal the true cost of monetary collapse. Numbers are abstract. Human suffering is not. Consider Margaret, 73 years old, a retired schoolteacher who spent 40 years educating children. She saved carefully her entire working life, putting money aside each month for retirement. By 2008, her life savings couldn't buy a single meal. 4 decades of discipline and sacrifice, worthless in weeks. She wasn't alone. An entire generation watched their futures evaporate. The professional class disintegrated. Doctors abandoned hospitals, not because they didn't care about patients, because their monthly salary couldn't buy a week's groceries. Engineers left factories. Teachers fled schools. The educated middle class that Zimbabwe had spent decades building simply dissolved. Many became traders, not by choice, but survival. They'd buy soap, cooking oil, or batteries, anything tangible, and resell it hours later for more worthless currency. Goods held value. Money didn't. A university professor selling tomatoes on a street corner wasn't a failure. It was adaptation. Children paid the price. School fees that were affordable Monday became impossible by Friday. Enrollment collapsed. A generation lost access to education because their parents couldn't keep pace with prices that changed faster than weather. Healthcare became a luxury. Hospitals lacked medicine, equipment, and staff. People died from treatable conditions simply because the economy couldn't function. Childbirth became dangerous. Routine surgeries became impossible. The statistics paint the picture in brutal clarity. Life expectancy dropped from 62 years to 44 years in less than a decade. This wasn't just an economic crisis, it was a humanitarian catastrophe. The currency collapse didn't just destroy wealth, it killed people. Some fled. An estimated 3 million Zimbabweans left the country. They crossed into South Africa, Botswana, anywhere that offered functioning money and basic stability. Those who remained faced daily choices between impossible options. The middle class evaporated. Savings meant nothing. Pensions became jokes. Insurance policies were worthless paper promising worthless payments. In normal times, people spend decades building wealth. In hyperinflation, that wealth evaporates in weeks. The tragedy of Zimbabwe isn't just what happened, it's how fast it happened, and how few saw it coming until escape became impossible. Not everyone was caught off guard. While ordinary Zimbabweans trusted government assurances that the situation was temporary, a different group was watching the data. Wealthy Zimbabweans, international investors, anyone with financial sophistication and the means to act. They saw the same warning signs: budget deficits expanding, money supply exploding. Political leaders blaming everyone except their own policies. They recognized the pattern from history, and they acted. The first moves were subtle, converting Zimbabwean dollars to foreign currency. US dollars, British pounds, South African rand, anything backed by a functioning economy. They opened offshore accounts in jurisdictions beyond government reach. Then came the shift to hard assets. Gold, silver, physical commodities that held value across millennia, real estate in stable countries, ownership of businesses that produced essential goods. Some bought livestock, cattle, goats, chickens. In an agricultural society facing food shortages, animals were wealth that couldn't be printed into worthlessness. The truly wealthy left entirely. They relocated families to South Africa, the UK, Australia. They transferred businesses offshore. They watched from safe distances as their former home collapsed. This created what economists call currency flight. When informed money loses faith, it creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. Capital fleeing the country accelerates the very collapse that triggered the flight. It becomes a death spiral. Here's what burns. The window to protect yourself is always shorter than you think. Those who acted in 2004, when inflation was merely concerning, preserved most of their wealth. Those who waited until 2007, when the crisis was obvious, saved much less. Those who waited until 2008 lost everything. The elites were moving assets while ordinary citizens trusted official statements. The people with access to information protected themselves. Those without access became victims. This pattern repeats throughout history, and it raises uncomfortable questions about who has information today that ordinary people don't. Now we arrive at the part that actually matters to your life. Zimbabwe was a small country with a weak currency and no global significance. It's tempting to dismiss its collapse as irrelevant to modern developed economies. That would be a mistake. Look at what major central banks have done since 2008. The Federal Reserve's balance sheet was around $900 billion before the financial crisis. Today, it exceeds $8 trillion. That's not gradual growth. That's explosion. In response to 2020's crisis, the Fed created more new dollars in a few months than it had in the previous century combined. Trillions materialized from nothing. They called it quantitative easing. Critics call it money printing with better marketing. The European Central Bank went even further. Negative interest rates, the deliberate destruction of savings yield. Japan has printed so aggressively for so long that its central bank now owns more than half of all Japanese government bonds. This is financial repression. When real interest rates fall below inflation, savers are slowly robbed. Their purchasing power erodes while they watch. It's hyperinflation's quiet cousin. Now, important caveats. The US dollar has something Zimbabwe never had. Global reserve currency status. Demand for dollars extends far beyond American borders. Oil trades in dollars. International debts are denominated in dollars. This creates artificial demand that cushions excess printing. But here's what keeps me awake at night. Zimbabwe's leaders also believed they were exceptional. They believed their country could handle policies that destroyed others. They believed the rules didn't apply to them. Until suddenly they did. Governments around the world are telling you inflation is transitory, under control, nothing to worry about. These are the same institutions that missed the 2008 crisis entirely. The same experts who called subprime mortgages contained. Do you trust them? The parallels aren't perfect, but they're close enough to demand attention. The same mechanics that destroyed Zimbabwe, printing money to cover deficits you can't afford, are operating in every major economy. The scale is different, the timeline might be different, but the underlying physics is identical. So how do you recognize the early stages of currency death before it's too late? Zimbabwe left us a checklist. Every hyperinflation follows similar patterns. Here's what to watch. First, persistent budget deficits funded by money creation. When governments consistently spend more than they collect and bridge the gap with new currency, they're diluting existing money. Watch central bank balance sheets, watch debt monetization. If deficits keep growing and the printing continues, the clock is ticking. Second, loss of foreign investor confidence. When international money starts leaving, it signals informed observers have lost faith. Monitor foreign holdings of domestic debt. If outsiders are reducing exposure while the government claims everything is fine, believe the money, not the words. Third, growing gaps between official and market exchange rates. In Zimbabwe, black market rates revealed the real value of currency long before official rates admitted the truth. When people pay premiums for foreign currency outside legal channels, they're voting against the local money. Fourth, increasing use of alternative currencies. When citizens start preferring foreign currencies, gold, or even barter for everyday transactions, trust in official money is breaking down. Watch for dollarization, watch for crypto adoption driven by monetary fear. Fifth, political leaders blaming external forces. When governments blame speculators, foreign enemies, or saboteurs for inflation rather than their own policies, they're in denial. Denial prevents course correction. Course correction is the only exit ramp. Apply these indicators to current global conditions. Central bank balance sheets at record highs. Government debt at levels previously only seen during world wars. Increasing interest in hard assets and alternative currencies. Officials insisting inflation is temporary. Not every warning sign guarantees collapse, but ignoring all of them guarantees you'll be caught unprepared if collapse comes. Most people won't recognize these patterns until it's too late. Now you know what to watch for. The question is whether you'll act on that knowledge.